So, hi everyone. I'm Clayton Ramnarine, co-founder and CEO of Una. Thank you for joining today's session on how AI is reshaping FP&A. So, my hope is, at a high level, to explore how finance teams can move, to predictive planning using AI, unlocking speed, accuracy, and confidence in decision making. We'll show you how Una is built from the ground up to deliver this transformation. So, the way that we think about Una first is if we're going to create a process around your annual budgeting or around monthly reporting or monthly or quarterly forecasting. The goal here is to make it repeatable and streamlined so that you can use it over and over and reduce the cycle time and and automate as much as you can. So we have a very robust workflow automation solution built into Una. So this is where we can lay out the steps across any different process that you have. We can lay them out in parallel, in sequence. We can create approvals and feedback loops within the process. And this is something that you can then run whenever you want. You can run it on a schedule, on a timer every month, run this process to complete our automated financial reporting, or, you can run it on demand. So if you need to just, at the month end close and you're making adjustments in the ERP or in the ledger, you can, click on a button and, more of the data will flow into the system. And so the way that we think about it is, this is a very simple drag and drop GUI. You connect all the different steps that are happening in parallel or sequence. You can combine the different types of steps. So this might be, hey, finance user update drivers in your model. This might be load data. And another step might be, hey, let's collaborate with end users, using, a shared template. So the way that we think about this is like, if you look at any step in a planning process, it might involve other people in collaboration, planning for their specific cost and revenue by department or entity, project, whatever your planning requirements are. The idea is you want to create one template for each kind of use case. So as an example, capacity planning, expense planning, revenue planning, workforce planning. Those are all components to complete the broader plan. The goal is create a template, assign it to a task, due dates associated with it, assign the owner and then users to it. And based on the user's permissions, only data that's relevant to them will actually populate into the template. This significantly reduces the manual ownership of how you go and collect and consolidate information across teams. So what we've seen, typically those who are working in Excel have a very gigantic Excel model, multiple tabs, each kind of look the same, just varies by department. They cut and paste out a tab, they send it through email, they give it to a user, they get it back. Then they have to reconcile that against their bigger model, and then they need formulas and stuff to roll it up, and then then that drives some of the reporting. So this removes all of that. Now a user comes into the system, and this is what they'll see. So they can come in, they will see their tasks, in a calendar view. What am I participating in? When is the due date? When does it kick off? What is the progress associated with it? They can click into it. They can access their template, and then they can start doing their planning. As a budget administrator, you'll be able to see where every one of your users are relative to the task that you've assigned them. Whether that task is overdue, started, in progress, or completed. So kind of your naughty list to go in and tap somebody on the shoulder to say, hey, we want to stay on track. We need you to hurry up and complete your plan, that kind of thing. And of course, then you have your details. So if I'm a user, I'll see all of the different actions that are required of me in a list view as well. And then I can, based on my percentage of completion, I can keep updating this as I go along to ensure that there's visibility and transparency into all the actions as we move towards completing any specific process. So this is all about coordination and communication. When we go back to the plan, the toolbox doesn't end there. So we have created quite a sophisticated level of workflow tools in our toolbox. So this is a very simplistic view of workflow, but now we can integrate into email, Slack, Teams, so messaging services that will, allow you to push and pull information from these different mediums of communication. So if there's reminders about a specific step in your process is coming up and you want to make sure that users are aware, you can build in reminders into your workflow. If you want to push out pre-built reports or dashboards or templates to users through these mediums, you have that ability as well. We also realize that planning and only gets better if you can connect all sorts of different points of view from across the business. So, not just the financial perspective, but hey, detailed revenue planning or employee planning or operational planning. All those components can be modeled into Una, and we'll be able to connect all those different sources in an automated way using Azure Data Factory. So there's over 200 plus connectors there. We built also our own APIs natively into HubSpot and Salesforce into other CRMs so that we can pull, pipeline data if that's part of your, some of your drivers towards building your forecast and your plan. On top of that, we have a full AI toolbox within our workflow automation engine. So if you start connecting different models into your planning process and you start having, all sorts of granular level detail coming in, that can be a lot of data. And it does require reconciliation to understand, where, data is misaligned, where it needs to be normalized or showing you where outliers are, whether risk or opportunities in your process. So what we do is, we layer on AI components on import of data. So it can run a regression analysis. We can do anomaly detection at different levels. We can run a time series forecast. As you import data, you can start trend lining out to where different things are, what their trajectory is going forward, and all sorts of different things. So we can layer in AI components that autonomously run as as part of your process, your overall process. So moving into the actual planning, if we wanted to start with importing data. So we talked about the workflow automation. So the first thing is we want to build a model. So think about a model that is a way to bring all this data together and be able to work with it very dynamically and very quickly. So think about a giant pivot table, a way to look at and segment your data, but then also look at it at different levels. So we can build different models. So we create things called models, and they have dimensions associated with it. These dimensions are different ways to look at your data. And each dimension in each model can aggregate based on a predefined aggregation methodology. So you can pre-build how your data rolls up. So if you think about your P&L, all your data is coming in at the GL level, and it can be rolled up in a predefined way. Same with balance sheet, cash flow. And then you can create operational drivers that are, maybe not aggregates, but they compute at different levels of your model. So it's very robust. And you can have multiple models that are all connected. So you could have a model for finance, more detailed model for, modeling your employees and connect to your HRS system, or modeling revenue at a much deeper level, connected to your CRM. So it depends on the use case, but all of that data comes together. It's then automated in terms of ongoing information flow through our APIs. So if you want to look at, HubSpot or Salesforce, we can connect into your pipeline and data to understand how, your leads, opportunities, and customers are moving through your pipelines. So that'll give us some operational data that we can use to better and more accurately bottoms up plan how revenue is orchestrated, as an example. So once you have your data in your model, you're bringing in, and now you've set your process up. Now it's time to actually do the action of planning. So maybe you do start with a forecast. So let's open up our first AI forecast. So now you have your planning, your planning workflow. And let's say you want to run a forecast first to annualize your plan or to set, kind of your baseline, and then you're going to make adjustments. So you can run your forecast at any level of the model. This is a revenue forecast based on pipeline data. We've identified what our performance drivers are. We've been able to then model, through AI what that's going to look like. And then I can make adjustments up or down on, any part of my model, and everything else will recalculate. So I can see here, user has been, kind of modeling with our average deal size on revenue, but kind of bring that down a bit to, let's say, maybe 50,000 per unit. I can model my win rates or conversion rates at any part of my funnel. The idea is, I can make adjustments, on my operational drivers, and I can see that then permeate through my entire revenue model at whatever level of my model that I want. So in this case, I'm changing kind of the price equation here and seeing what the impact might be. And this is in my what if scenario. And again, I can do this for any, any scenario. You have unlimited abilities to plan and model, and then compare and contrast any different types of scenario as it intersects period and any kind of segment of your data. So in this case, we're planning revenue by region, by source, so inbound or outbound, by market, and pipeline stage. So this is an example of, hey, data's come in from our CRM. We've organized it in a specific way. We know what drives our forecasted revenue. It's our conversion rates and our average deal size and our time and stage. Let's make some adjustments to that. And let's see what the impact is to, net new business, opening, expansion, churn. And then let's calculate out some of the unit economics things or KPIs that we want to track. So that could set the baseline for going in and doing your annual plan. So now I'm going to go look at starting my planning process with my revenue plan. So my revenue model goes and plans down at a very granular level. I'm looking at planning by region. So I could look at all regions consolidated to see what my revenue might look like. And then I can drill down, as the administrator and plan a specific region. I'm looking at planning at a region by market segment, by product, and then by scenario. I have my historical perspective here on the left, and then I can update my drivers and assumptions here on the right that will then calculate up here. So any change that I made in my planning grid below, my modeling grid, all the visualizations up at the top will automatically update. And what's really cool is that you can see here I've connected my capacity model to revenue. So depending on what I model down here in my drivers and how that's going to change my revenue projections, it's going to tell me, if I'm plus or minus on capacity, and that will lead me to the next step of my plan. So here, what I'm guided to do here, as I can see in mid-market for product A, I need to reconcile between what targets I've been given and what my revenue projections are. So I can go in and model something, and I can model this based on reporting that I have coming out of Una, tracking, how my pipeline performance is. So maybe my conversion rate is somewhere a little bit higher for this specific product, market, and segment. And I make some of those changes, update my conversion rates, I hit save, and now my revenue updates at the top. So when I look at now my capacity, I see that I don't have enough coverage to actually hit this revenue number from a sales perspective. So my next step in my sales process is to go to my capacity model. And I'll go to my capacity model, and I can see exactly where that gap is. So I still have that 4.8%. It's in the US East, and I can see what the total value of that gap is. Below, I have my capacity model in terms of resources, and I can see how they've been allocated. I can see what their productivity metrics are, and I can go ahead and change those to close the gap. So I might want to model a higher level of productivity. And if I do that, I need to also justify why that's happening. What are we investing in that's actually going to improve productivity? If I do have something like that, I can actually record that in what we call our action tracker. Hey, we're going to invest in sales training. We're going to improve, some other way in which we're going to try and improve productivity along our sales process. I can record that, and then I can track. So at any point in time, what we're going to resource or make changes to will be something that we want to see is actually having the impact that we expect. Oftentimes what we see in planning is we have a strategy, build a budget, but then when it comes to execution, it's kind of a black box. Within Una, we try to connect the full system strategy, the budget, to execution, and then iteration. So that was a bit of a sidetrack, but here we want to go and either change our drivers around productivity, or we want to go add people to the workforce for this specific sales region. I think in this case, these are pretty high, so I'm going to go and jump into my workforce planning for sales. So I go to workforce, I look at my sales department as it pops up here, and I'm going to see my sales department. So for sales, because I'm connected into my HRS system, I'm going to get a full roster list of who is on the team. I can see exactly what role they're in, what department, what market region I've assigned them to, hire dates, like anything specific around my employees, I'll be able to report on if it's in my HRS system. I also have all the computations here around taxes, commissions, quota, and I can allocate, resources any way that I want. But the goal here is to get a bird's eye view of, where are folks located, where are the costs associated with which cost accounts, and then below, hey, I want to close the gap for my US East team by adding, kind of a new sales rep. And I can do this as a rep, or I can do this as a to be hired, or I can plan at the role level. It's really up to you. This is just a very simplistic view. So I'm going to put to be hired, use some Excel skill here, copy, because that's a US East above, paste it. They're a new sales rep. And I'm going to give them a lower quota. And then I can save that, and then it's going to update my model. What's also really cool is that, if you want to do something extra, you want to do some ad hoc modeling too, you can always download this view into Excel. So I made that change. Everything in here is updated. I'm going to go back to my capacity plan and just make sure that I've accounted for the change that I have. So now I have the appropriate coverage to go in and hit that plan in the US East based on, the drivers and assumptions I made in my plan. Okay, so just sitting still as the sales leader, once I've done my top-down revenue plan and I've worked through my capacity and workforce plan, I need to do my operating expense input. So I'm going to open my input sheet that's been assigned to me, still sales. Again, this is a template, so I can look at this at a consolidated view if I'm the budget administrator, or if I'm a user, whenever I click on, my specific department, only data that pertains to me is going to populate into the template. In this case, I'm sales. I'm looking at my actuals historical, and I'm planning into the future period. So I want to see what the run rate is relative to what I've done in the past, and then I want to go and model what I'm going to, spend for next year. So the way the canvas is laid out for this part of the planning exercise is actual to plan. I can click in, get more, interactive with some of the charts and graphs. I can plan into just kind of yellow space. Oops. Hopefully you can see the yellow. This is where I can make inputs and changes. I'm below allocated expenses. So anything in white here in this area is allocated from finance. Stuff that I naturally wouldn't plan to, like what is rent, repairs, utilities, those are all just allocated expenses. I can see my actuals for the prior year and some of the detail there and the variance between what's been said here in my non-zero based plan. So now as the sales leader, I can go in and make adjustments. So maybe, we're going to do some big advertising campaign or a user conference in May. Maybe I have, some quarterly promotion here. I'm going to right click. I have a bunch of different options to adjust or spread data. And I can come in here and proportionally add maybe $6,000 worth of spend for that quarter and spread it proportionally based on last year's spread. Conditional formatting embedded in every template to tell me, how far off I am based on some rules. So I'm well ahead of spend on advertising at the moment. And I just want to be alerted to that automatically. When I look at software spend as an example, if I want to drill down to, the vendor level, a lot of people like to plan at a vendor level. I can drill through to my transactions. And I can see what I actually spent last year by vendor. So because we're integrated into your ERP system, we will have access to all of this rich transactional data that we can display and display the attributes associated with that data. So here are all my different vendors. Here are the licenses. Here's the spend. And so now I have, as a sales leader, I can actually see, what we spent before and what I need to make adjustments to. And maybe I want to plan at that level. So on software, I can use my line item details. I can go in and plan against those different pieces of tech that I'm using. I can add I'm going to add Una's revenue intelligence to this and forecasting. And here's what I expect. Confirm, and away we go. As I hit save, as I'm modeling this for my department, everything updates in my model. I can see in real time, visually, what the impact is to some of the changes I'm making. Also, there's a full audit trail cell by cell. So I can see this full story of how data has changed cell by cell, user date and timestamp. And I can always revert back to a prior instance of save. So, modeling is always modeling. You can go forward and backward here. You can do this at the cell by cell level, but you can also do it at the snapshot level. So I can see, from my sales department, how my full plan has evolved over time. So between now and my last save, it's going to highlight for me exactly the cells that I changed. So you can see there's that big advertising dollar put in May for our user conference, promotion we're doing in the quarter, and some of the line item details we put in for new software, Una's revenue intelligence for the software line item. So lots of ways for a user to do the things they need to do to get their plan in here. On top of that, as the plan rolls forward and the plan's locked down, and then you want to reforecast monthly, you can use the same template. So maybe I want to look at now my plan 2025 and roll it over and look at a forecast 1+11. So what this does is now that every month we're rolling in actuals into the model, I can just roll forward the view, just like a pivot table. So now my first month, I can see what my actuals are, and then it copied 11 months of my plan scenario. And now I have a forecast 1+11, just with a few changes in perspective up here in the filter. Then I can go ahead and make changes here based on things that have happened in the business over the last month. And now I have a full reforecast for sales in my operating expense budget. So we try to make it really visual, clean, easy to use application. Now, of course, one of the things that's really important is being able to always report and on the data that's coming in and how the business is doing. So things like variance reporting are just native because we have actuals, we have your plan scenarios and your forecasts. We can then build views for you to go and do variance reporting and comment on that stuff. This is again where we can use AI. So AI is an example. We have built in all these different assistants into the application. So you can see here we have the Unabot. This is kind of your assistant to go in and find different reports so you don't have to search for it and then ask it questions about your data, which I've done here on the right-hand side, and I'll show you in a second. We have the Una Help button, which is actually an assistant to go in and read our documentation. So if you have any questions about how the application works and you want to understand, hey, how do I build a new calculation or a dashboard or a template, you'll get the answer right away. We also have a modeling assistant. So if you want to build a new model on your own, you give it the raw data, you give an example of the report, and it will actually infer, what the model should look like, what the dimensionality is, what the potential hierarchies and aggregation roll-up should look like. It will import the data, and hopefully within minutes, you'll be able to have, a working model or a starting point that you can go and refine. So lots of use of AI here to really improve your experience. So as an example, in this particular case, I went to my bot, I asked it, find me a consolidated variance report. It brought me one, I clicked on the link, it opened it up, and then I asked it to highlight key variances in the report. So of course I can do this myself, but it's nice because there's a lot of data here. There's a lot of mental cognition and try to interpret all this data. It's nice that someone can just pinpoint it for me, and then I can go from there. So it's just sort of a shortcut, even though you can get there in your own, like 2 clicks of a button. In this particular variance report, we're looking at plan versus forecast 1+11. These are all visuals that you can pop out, you can put in a report or a dashboard. You can do further analysis, like you can drill through and go, why did I have variances between salaries and wages, between my plan and forecast? And you can drill through to your workforce plan and identify the areas where the variances are. Same with your OPEX, drill through to OPEX, and then do the same type of analysis. So within a few clicks, you can get to kind of the root cause of where things are off, and then using our actions, like what are the things we're going to do to get back on track or to take advantage of opportunities that we're seeing. So we use our action here, and then you can build any kind of scenario on the fly, change assumptions and drivers, and then reforecast what the future looks like. So that's just a high level view of Una in a nutshell.